Please be seated. Proceedings are now resumed. Members, when we took the lunch break, we had completed the looking at the appropriations for the Minister for Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing, and Minister for Commerce, Planning, and Infrastructure. We're now going to turn our attention to the appropriation changes arising for the Minister of Education, Employment, and Gender Affairs. So, if there are no questions, I'm going to take the very first, that first block as one vote. And I will put the question, all those in favor of EGA 1, Policy Advice, Governance, and Ministerial Support Services, negative $533,000. EGA 5, Primary Education Services, $1,201,682. EGA 6, Secondary Education Services, negative $971,825. EGA 7, Education Services for Students with Special Needs, $1,987,784. EGA 10, Education Evaluation and Support Services, negative $400,000. TP30, Local and Overseas Scholarships and Bursaries, $2,036,620. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Members, can I take the next four in one block vote? Okay. All those in favor of NGS 25, Teaching of Tertiary Education Courses, $350,000. TP30, Local and Overseas Scholarships and Bursaries, negative $50,000. TP72, Other Youth and Sports Programs, negative $100,000. And EI12, Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture, and Lands, negative $3,337,377. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. And those against, no. Member for Bodden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually trying to get your attention before. Just looking at EI12, the equity investment for 3.377 million. I was just looking at the reason, and it says a reduction in funding used to offset increase in transfer payments, employment initiatives, CARICOM crime and security aid agenda, and Cayman Airways debt. I'm just trying to understand the breakdown of that amount in terms of what went where, just to get a better understanding.
Minister for Education.
Mr. Chair, as they relate to Cayman Airways, which I have to listen carefully, I think that's what the member probably want to get after, was 2.5 million. It was for an engine that they needed to replace, and a 737-800, I believe.
Yeah, I remember seeing it somewhere. I was just trying to understand the breakdown in terms of what went where. Okay, thank you, Madam Minister.
There are no other questions. I put the question to all those in favor of NGS 25. Teaching of Tertiary Education Courses, $350,000. TP30, Local and Overseas Scholarships and Bursaries, negative $50,000. TP72, Other Youth and Sports Programs, negative $100,000. And EI12, Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture, and Lands, negative $3,337,377, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The next block, I would going to just move as for an approval in bulk because that represents the reorganization of the government of the ministry following the general election. So I put the question, all those in favor of EGA 16, Cadet Corps Services, $168,437, EGA 17, Sports Service, $1,755,556, EGA 18, Youth Services, $243,409, EGA 20, Management of Land Information and Provision of Surveying Services, $2,387,752, EGA 21, Agriculture Support and Regulatory Services, $2,463,575, NGS 24, Spaying and Neutering of Dogs and Cats, $20,880, NGS 58, Elite Athletes Program, $37,425, NGS 59, Youth Development Programs, $111,425, NGS 60, Sports Programs, $281,389, TP 49, Youth Programs and Other Non-Governmental Organizations, $19,000, TP 72, Other Youth and Sports Programs, $217,369, EI 12, Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture, and Lands, $176,535, and EA 4, Land Purchase, $800,000. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. That concludes the appropriations to the Minister of Health of Education. We now turn to the appropriation chain.
Permit me, please, before you go on, to thank all honourable members of the committee and my hard-working staff for assisting, as well as the Minister of Finance for their diligence and assembling and reconciling these accounts.
Thank you. We now move to...
Mr. Chairman, I'm getting elucidation from my good friend, a member from Easton, and that I thanked holistically the members of the House, but he wanted me to specifically say the members of the opposition, including but not limited to the member from Easton.
That is so true, Mr. Chairman, because she does know that we are the scrutineers and not her.
All right. We move on now to the appropriations to the Office of the Deputy Governor. When? She's coming? Okay. Okay, so we're going to examine the appropriations to the exceptional circumstances, transactions, the appropriations to the Deputy Governor. Are there any specific areas that, okay, can you give me an indication, member from Georgetown Central, as to which ones you want to?
CIV 10.
CIV 10?
Yes.
Okay, CIV 10, servicing of the Legislative Assembly and members of the Legislative Assembly, $88,000. Question, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm assuming it's the Deputy Governor who's going to be answering to the questions? Yes? Can we say how far we are with the approach to having the Legislative Assembly be independent of the Deputy Governor's office?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I thank the member for his question. As the member is aware, it has been a historical effort to bring forward legislation that would allow the Legislative Assembly to be an independent entity, autonomous of the civil service and the executive. Under the prior administration and under the prior body of the Legislative Assembly, there was a select committee that had commenced work that resulted in a draft bill. That bill has continued to be reviewed with the input that had been made by members of the Select Committee being further reflected in that draft. There is currently a draft that is being further considered, particularly looking at the examples from other independent parliaments, and it is our intention to have a draft bill that can be considered in time for the November sitting of Parliament.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, member, through you, Mr. Chair. Can the Deputy Governor say, has there been any budgetary plans to create a proper legislative library for the members of Parliament?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, there has been funding for the library, but when the member refers to a proper library, does he want to elaborate on what he envisions as proper library?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to say what my vision is. Obviously, it's whatever the Assembly thinks should be. I just wanted identification. If there is whatever the vision of the Legislative Assembly by way of the head of this Assembly, whatever that may be, is there a budgeted amount or is there a plan, is what my question is.
So to reiterate, there is funding within the existing budget for library, but the member will be aware that the physical building that the Legislative Assembly convenes in is constrained in terms of the space. So I was trying to understand the expectations there, because I do know that the leadership of the Legislative Assembly, in the person of the Speaker and the staff that support him, are looking at capital plans that would allow for improvements in the facilities that can be offered here. Those capital budgets are not reflected in our current budget, but they are being further revised so that they could move forward for consideration. There are a number of features that are considered within the capital works budget, but you will note from the appropriations that were made in 16-17 that minor capital works were already done to facilitate improvements at the Legislative Assembly in the form of the microphones that members enjoy today, those services, improved Wi-Fi services. There's also been addition to enhanced security of the precincts of the Legislative Assembly. But major capital works, the plans for that are still in discussion, still being costed, and still to be ultimately funded.
Mr. Chairman, just for the informant, I want to thank the acting
Mr.
Deputy
Chairman,
Governor.
I thought I was next.
Mr. Chairman, there are plans for
I was the next
security.
speaker in line, Mr. Chairman.
Security.
Could I just ask you, just give way, and we'll come back to you. I apologize. It is my fault that I allowed it to go.
Mr. Chairman,
at your request, yes,
so I
sir.
finish, Mr. Chairman. I think you're the chairman, and you called on me, and I'm trying to assist the question.
Mr. Chairman, I was next in line.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, there are several aspects of matters that we are looking at, including security, and we see that as one of the most important priorities. Well, all the works are priorities because we have been talking about it for a while, but security matters are one that we are trying to deal with. Security matters to assist in the form of personnel and in the form of some material works that needs to be done to protect the Legislative Assembly and the staff complement. Here, as the Honorable Acting Deputy Governor said, we have plans which are being revised and worked on for works which will be in the back of the building, which will be hopefully an office for the Leader of the Opposition and an office for the Premier, and a space where it would be a resource area and a place where there will be, enough equipment for that. They need to go social media, they need to have other books, that sort of thing. Hopefully, we'll get to that point soon. But those are plans that are in the works, being reviewed, being revised by the portfolio until such time that this assembly becomes independent of that.
Thank you, sir. Member Freeze, then.
Mr. Chairman, now that that has been said, I got a couple of questions on this particular thing about the legislature. One is on the that most recent intervention there. I wonder where does the House Committee come into this, which represents the membership here and the needs of the members?
Deputy Governor.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as the member will be well aware, I'm not a member of the House Committee. I'm not privy to the deliberations of that body. What I can tell you is that in the normal process of raising a budget, that we receive submissions from the entities. Those submissions are then taken forward through our budgetary review process. What's ultimately approved for Cabinet comes to Parliament, and what is ultimately approved by Parliament is what gets spent. So that is the process we followed. I don't go beyond into the deliberations of the committees of this Honorable House. I'm not privy to those.
Well, I think she answered it, Mr. Chairman. She said that they take submissions from the different entities here. Therefore, by extension, I suspect that the House Committee has made those submissions in accordance with what was explained about the extension to the building, in keeping with the wishes, needs of the membership, because that's what House Committee is for, which then goes on to the administrative side. So I am glad to hear that the House Committee has been involved in all this planning. That was a giggle? Mean that not happening? Or? Because that's what the Deputy Governor just said, that they take on the submissions for the budgetary process. But they were saying that there's a capital budget that is being reviewed. So I take it as a member that my wishes, my comfort here is being considered by the membership, the committee that represents me as a member in all these budgetary matters. And if someone wants to clarify that, they can do it later, but that's what I take it to be. I would like to ask the Deputy Governor, she said that the committee, the subcommittee of the whole House that did the bill to do the separation of Parliament from the executive had created a bill, but changes were being made to it. Can we hear whether or not that bill has been referred back to that subcommittee, because that subcommittee is required to report to this House, the full membership, on that bill prior to it coming here, because I understand it's coming in November.
Mr. Chairman, through you, and I have to admit my lack of familiarity with these processes, but it's my understanding that the Select Committee, which was a part of the prior Parliament, would have been stood down when that Parliament dissolved. And there has not been, to my understanding, a selection and motion to form a new committee. So we are working under the instructions that we had received to provide further clarity in areas, particularly looking at distinguishing the identity of the body that would be the management committee from the executive that would be the board of that management committee. And there were changes like that that were left for us to administratively look into how those could be resolved and to reflect those in the changes. But at present, my understanding is there wouldn't be a select committee to report to, as the House dissolved and there was not a new motion brought in this new Parliament. But if I am laboring under misinformation, then I certainly invite that clarity, because work continues in the interim, and if there are others that need to be consulted in that process, then I would expect to be notified through the proper channels.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the honesty of the Deputy Governor, but I agree with her that it falls away after the House is dissolved. However, the responsibility lies with the person who has responsibility here to initiate a continuation of that in the new House. I think there has never been a House in the life of parliamentary procedures and parliamentary democracy in this country that didn't change members at elections. Therefore, it must be restarted, for the loss of words now, but it must be restarted at the commencement of a new session of this legislature. And certainly, if it has fallen away, all authority that was given to the executive by that one has now fallen away too. Therefore, the respect must be afforded members, whether we are repeat or we're new, in the next session, which is the current 4 years that we have, that must be renewed and a new committee be formed to review it.
I don't know that there was a question there, more of a statement, observation.
I wonder if okay, I take that, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if the deputy chair can say if she will be bringing a new motion to set up a new committee, because it's currently the deputy governor who has responsibility for the administrative side of the legislature. No, that's what we're trying to separate, if we're going to set up a new committee.
Member for Georgetown Central, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one follow-up question. Can the Deputy Governor say whether there's been any provision of plans to deal with the fencing in the back of the Legislative Assembly, as it doesn't create a level of privacy at the current moment? Is there any plans? I know that we were talking about security earlier. I just wanted to confirm whether that was involved in the plans, because at this current moment we have public members who are able to come right up to the fence and almost interact, if I dare say, while we're trying to get into Parliament to deal with the business of the people.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can say that we, as we've had representations in Finance Committee today, works are continuing to be considered by the leadership of the Legislative Assembly, the Speaker, and the executive team, the officers that support the Legislative Assembly. Some works have already been taken to secure or to add additional security. Additional steps are being taken in the form of additional staffing to support security. But as it relates to the extension of the wall in the back to provide greater privacy and security, I can say that that is being looked into, but is also trying to be coordinated with the broader, more major capital works, if they are also to be considered in the near term. So we are looking at the phasing of works and what might be able to be done in a shorter term without having to be undone if additional works are to be undertaken.
Mr. Chair, if you would permit, just one more follow-up on that. I do appreciate the Deputy Governor's clarity, and I take those into consideration. We know that some of the property that was once occupied by the tower building has now been added onto the back end of the property of the Legislative Assembly. In respect to those future plans, is there any considerations to accumulating more of that property to facilitate those new developments in the near future, because obviously that is government property as well.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to say that looking at the land that would be necessary to accommodate any capital projects would be part and parcel of that project plan. But the member is correct that we have already been able, as part of the works that have happened over the past year and a half, 2 years, to extend parking facility here, realizing as well that we've had additional the growth in the number of members of parliament and the need to be able to accommodate more of our staff and persons who are called upon to appear to be able to accommodate them with parking. And so that was something that was able to be facilitated by Public Works to extension of the parking facilities here at the Legislative Assembly, which included accessing a portion of the land that was the parcel that held the prior tower building. But if there are future expansion works, the land access will obviously have to be considered as part of that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Member from East End.
I hate to continue to bring these things up. That, and this is for the edification of everybody. That extension to this building, parking, was thoroughly ventilated for many years in here and agreed by members that that's what we should do. That is the process. That members make the decision here on anything to do with this parliament. When this parliament was built in the early 70s, that's how it was done. When they used to be held in the old courthouse, where the museum is now. That was seriously ventilated. The most important part of that was we were destroying Princess Royal Park. And that is where the contention came amongst parliamentarians. Eventually, some of them acquiesced, and it was built. Well, some of them acquiesce. That's how it works. But the key is that it was ventilated on the floor of Parliament and agreed, whether it's majority or not, or all, or unanimously. Here we are, hearing that we're going to do capital works, and not one member of this, as far as I know, I have not heard any debate or discussions surrounding it. That's not how these things go. And it's fortunate or unfortunately, we need to ensure that people's concerns, wishes, or whatever the case may be, is properly aired, because this has been here 40-odd years, and the rest will be for 40 years too. We don't know what the designs are, how we're going to interface it with this building, whether people wish for it not to be interfaced in that manner. All those things need to be considered publicly, whether we're going to destroy the structure or join into it, and how it's going to be done, or stand alone, whether we want to maintain this for historical values and perspectives. I don't know, but that's what needs to happen. At the very least, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask members and the broader public not to engage in that flight of fancy that Mr. McLean just went on. There are no designs, there's no proposals to destroy this building or to demolish it. There's simply a discussion about the need for major capital works to facilitate the growth of the Parliament and the need for more staff and for more facilities for members. It's not even at a conceptual stage, it is a sort of identifying certain things. So the member is right, Mr. McLean is right. The members of this House do need to weigh in on these issues. But in his particular case, Sandcrab done right him. So I don't know why he worrying too much about being here for a long period of time, because I think he is nearing the end of that part of his life.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Sandcrab. Sandcrab got the handwriting all over me. I know what's in here, I can tell you that. But it is not fanciful about what I said, because I think maybe, I don't know if the Premier was listening, but there was discussion surrounding budgets haven't been sent about development, whether they're conceptual or what have you, about expansion, development expansion for space requirement, for library, for staff, for the leader of the opposition, for the Premier and the like. So if I misunderstood how far it has reached, then I'm fine with that. I merely ask that all and sundry who is involved in this concept or approve, understand what I said prior to this one.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bush.
What I said was that we are at a discussion level. We are at an idea level, and in those ideas we try to get costs before we move to a point where the committee would be looking at all the works that would be proposing, but we're certainly looking at ideas as to how to meet the needs and the protection of members. And we can only go that far because we haven't been able to sit down with the committee. I did speak to the chair at one point, at some point during this time, to say we need to sit down to look at these various ideas that we're talking about. But we have to try to put some idea together, which certainly will go to a House committee, because the House committee, there is a House committee, and it hasn't been existing today. I've been here 30-something years, and I've been part of it quite often. Sometimes I choose not to go on it. But we have a House committee. I did speak to the chair, but at this point in time, we are only talking amongst ourselves, myself basically, and the Sarge, looking at various needs. As we know, when we come here, we jam when we have official functions. We don't have space. There's not space for opposition to caucus. There's not space for government to caucus. We have to use one room, basically. We have staff down here. There's not enough room. Our constituents come, and we have no place to sit down. We've got to stand up in a corner to talk to them. And so we're looking at how we can address all those needs at the same time. The priority, as far as one of the greatest priorities, is how do we protect this assembly and members? And that is the biggest concern. And we haven't got to the point where we would go to the committee or send anything to the committee as yet. Bearing in mind, Mr. Chairman, that the precincts of this assembly goes to the road includes that sidewalk out there, that is the precincts of this assembly, from what I've understood all these many years. We have to take all that into consideration. Traffic flows, all sorts of things. The Sergeant at Arms here, Mr. Evans, is very knowledgeable, how police background, and we are discussing, basically myself and him. We did pull in someone from Public Works to look at how if we have to add anything to this building, but it would go to the House Committee, not saying that that even is going to be the end of it, because at the end of the day, we can have as many House Committees we want, but it's the cabinet of this country that will vote the funds and will decide to bring a bill and will decide whether we're going forward or not. I recognize that.
Okay, like to move
Mr.
forward.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
just quickly, I agree that this place is now truncating membership. When it was built, it wasn't that many members in here. I think 12 came in here at that time. We're now 19, the staff is much bigger and what have you. And we have been saying for a long time that there needs to be something done. I totally agree. But we cannot be talking about costs if we don't have plans. And I hear something about looking at cost. You cannot cost something unless you have something to cost.
Mr. Chairman, if I should enlighten the member, we do have to, we can say to Public Works, and we have done that. This might be some of what is entailed, certainly from a perspective of security. And that, they can come up with an idea, not to even say that that is going to be the end of it. It is idea time. And I can tell you, I don't know how often that they have sat down, but I don't know anything about it, and I've been here quite a while, about anybody sitting down looking at finite plans. We've always talked and talked around the issue, but there's nothing finite has ever come to, not in my time, as ministers, nothing. And so we're taking it from there.
Mr. Chairman, I agree, but we need to put a price on something if you're doing cost. I don't know what that price is, but something. You need to ask somebody to look at a particular thing and cost it, or I have $10 million that I want you to stay within. It's something that has to be there. So don't tell me you don't got something.
Thank you. Members, I think we've taken the discussion as far as we can in this committee at this point. So I'd like for us to move forward. Yeah. Are there any other questions then with regard to CIV 10? I put the question, all those in favor of CIV 10, servicing of the Legislative Assembly and members of the Legislative Assembly, $88,000. OE 108, pay stagnation, negative $1,989,000. OE 114, administrative and advisory assistant.
Mr. Chair, I do apologize. I thought you were taking the vote just simply on CIV 10. That's what you said.
Yes.
So, but I do have just one question in respect to OE 114. The advisory assistance to the speaker, is that for an employee or specialist, or can we have an answer to that?
Deputy Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just referring to my statement in the Legislative Assembly yesterday on this matter. So just one moment, please. Thank you. So the funding increase of $50,500 under OE 114 was to facilitate, following the election, the hiring of a personal assistant and driver to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly. These were the funds that we needed to be able to facilitate that. And I hasten to add, Mr. Chairman, that when the sum of our movements are considered, the portfolio still contributed net savings to government, and we're well within our overall appropriations.
Any other questions? So I put the question once again. All those in favor of CIV 10, servicing of the Legislative Assembly and members of the Legislative Assembly, $88,000. OE 108, pay stagnation, negative $1,989,000. OE 114, administrative and advisory assistance to the Speaker, $50,500. EI 35, portfolio of the Civil Service, negative $181,500. EA 154, upgrades to executive assets, $43,000. And CIV 16, education evaluation services, $269,470. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. We turn next to the
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to say thank you so much. Are we done?
Yes.
And I just wanted to acknowledge the support and hard work of the Acting Chief Officer, Mrs. Andrea Falmo, the CFO, and senior leaders within the portfolio of the Civil Service. And I thank the Chairman and the members of the Finance Committee for their support.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we turn our attention now to the appropriations changes arising from exceptional circumstances appropriations to the Attorney General. EI 34, portfolio of legal affairs, negative $75,000. Are there any questions? If not, I put the question. All those in favor of EI 34, portfolio of legal affairs, negative $75,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. We next turn attention to appropriation changes arising from exceptional circumstances, appropriations to Cabinet on behalf of the Chief Justice. JAD2, support of court proceedings, negative $335,000. And EI 21, judicial administration, $335,000. Are there any questions? There are no questions. Put it that all those in favor of JAD2, support for court proceedings for negative $335,000, and EI 21, judicial administration, $335,000, standing part of the schedule to the bill. Please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. We turn next to appropriation changes arising from exceptional circumstances appropriations to the Oversight Committee of the Legislative Assembly. Are there any particular questions with regard to these appropriations, or may I put them to the vote? Mr. Member for Northside, go ahead.
That's setting up the office and laying out the office and stuff for the office of the ombudsman.
I believe it is. I'll see if we get the information, but I think it's right. to the member from Northside, we can confirm that that's what it shows it was for, the fit out of the offices.
Sir, Mr. Chairman, truly, I'm just trying to understand the process. The Office of the Ombudsman, there is a committee of the Legislative Assembly that has oversight in terms of what that office does, similar to what we have on the PSC, where we look at the expenditures for the Auditor General's office. Is the committee or whoever it is that literally approves this 500,000 also this fit out? Because this is a lot of money for fit out. I'm just trying to understand the approval process, the oversight process of the Office of the Ombudsman, just to make sure. Because what I don't want is to have someone out there running crazy in terms of incurring these kind of costs without no level of oversight.
Minister
Yeah,
Rivers, I believe you're the chair of the Oversight Committee.
Yeah, let me add some input into this conversation. So there is an Oversight Committee made up of Legislative Assembly members, as you have correctly stated. We do meet on a quarterly basis to review and approve the planned expenditure, so budget allocation, and then we get a report on such expenditure. Now, this, as was explained, this is the actual budget allocation. So we would have to, and I don't, in the Office of the Ombudsman, I'm not sure is even represented here today, I'm not able to give the committee the details of what that report said with respect to the actual expenditure incurred on this aspect, but there is a process that members of this Honourable House make up that Oversight Committee, and there is that quarterly reporting on expected budget expenditures, and then the reconciliation of the actual at the end of that quarter.
Mr. Chairman, so just briefly, that would have gone through the CTC, is called? CTC then, I assume, for the public management and finance law, to anything over 250,000 or something like that. I'm sure, I guess it would have gone through there, because, which you would know, Mr. Chairman, or your ministry, because it would have to go through there if you're spending 500,000 on a particular project, or it would have to be interdepartmental if it's below 250, it is, I think. So somewhere somebody needs to know whether or not the process was followed properly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 500,000 would be a CTC matter. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unless you're spending small bites.
And again, Mr. Chair, if you would just like me, I'd just like to thank the member for pointing out the fact that the actual process itself with respect to procurement, all of those decisions, that does not lie at the Oversight Committee level. That is something that's handled through the regular departmental channels.
So, Mr. Chair, in light of what the chair is saying, then it's a simple matter to call to find out in what sizes was this $500,000 spent from a departmental tendering process position.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up, particularly on the $500,000, we've been told that it's spent for refurbishment, or budgeted for that amount. Can we tell how far they are within that process, and any update? I noticed that there's nobody here to represent that office today to answer some of these questions, but it's a substantial amount of money, and I think there's enough questions that's related around it. Do we want to have somebody called in to answer some of those and move on to another line item? But those are legitimate questions that need to be answered.
Wait, no. Mr. Chairman, the Office of the Ombudsman, didn't they have a budget for 2016-17? Is this additional? Let's just get that clear. This is additional monies during that period, because remember, the Office of the Complaints Commissioner, the Office of the Ombudsman, the Office of Complaints from the Police were all amalgamated during this year. During this period, the period in question, 2016-17, or was it 18? Is this the amalgamated ombudsman, or is this the, this is? But that would have happened.
I believe that it is, yes, because it's the Office of the Ombudsman, and that office was created in 2017 with the amalgamation of the Freedom of Information and Complaints Commissioner and all of those
and the police
and the police as well.
Yeah, so no, there were budgets for those things already that were amalgamated. This is an additional $500,000 to accommodate all of those under one roof. That's the clarity that we need there.
I'll let the Financial Secretary give you some, see if he can shed light for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the initial or the original budget for the 18-month period that ended in December 2017, the original budget was gazetted the 29th of June 2016, and honorable members will know that would be for the financial year that would start the 1st of July 2016. In that budget, Mr. Chairman and honorable members, in that original budget, there wasn't any amount budgeted for equity investment in the Ombudsman office. There was not. At that point in time, there were two broad budgets. One was for the Oversight Committee of the Legislative Assembly, which was dealing with public investigations. And then there was a separate budget in respect of freedom of information investigations. So they were separate when the 1st of July 2016 financial year started. During the course of that 18 months, the offices were merged and the Ombudsman entity was created. But from the very beginning, there was not an equity investment budgeted for either one of those two separate offices. So what honorable members are seeing now in front of them in this supplementary bill was indeed a request for new funds that were never originally budgeted. And so the 500,000 in front that the committee is now looking at would have been funds that were approved for the Ombudsman office during the course of that 18-month period. But the initial budgeted figure for equity investment for an ombudsman was zero. In fact, the Ombudsman office itself didn't exist on the 1st of July 2016.
And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. But there were 4 offices that were merged together. 4? 3?
They weren't merged, man, they're separate still.
Amalgamated then.
Not out of that.
Complaints. Freedom of information. Police. And complaints. Yeah. Where were they located before? Was it in the same building? And the amalgamation of those offices, all those offices now, is, I'm sure we have seen an increase in staff members, I guess, and the necessity now to have I don't know, Mr. Chairman, but there is a separation between oversight and actual operation here, and expenditures for equity and the likes. Maybe we need to look at that ombudsman law and bring it on the oversight committee.
Mr. Chair, from my viewpoint, I still don't understand how all that may be rational about the merger and the amalgamation of the 4 department or 4 separate offices, but the description for this $500,000 is for refurbishment. That's $500,000 for offices for refurbishment. Did they buy all new equipment? Did they there needs to be, so I just need a little bit more understanding as to where the money went to. If it said to employee or new staffing, that would be more understandable. But this is chairs, tables, computers, desks. They would have had some of those stuff already in their current offices. So where is the $500,000 going to? And there needs to be some explanation to that.
There is an increase.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can add some. As I understand what happened when we created the Office of Ombudsman, we already had the company's commissioner, established office space, furniture, everything, functioning properly. We had the Freedom of Information Group, established office space, functioning properly. What was created new was the Office of Ombudsman, and then we added the police complaints commission to that, so that whatever staff they have for the police complaints commission, I think it's called, would have had to been added, and there wasn't any staff. It is my understanding that what they have done is they have moved all of those 1 floor up in the building that they're in, and that floor is where they're spending this $500,000 to refurbish. So the offices that they had one floor down are basically being vacated. I think a small amount of it may have gone to the Auditor General, right? I.e. a boardroom and et cetera, right? So the $500,000, as I understand it, is being spent or was spent to fit out a whole floor to accommodate these. Yeah. But there's been no amalgamation, there's been no merging. The other offices have still supposedly operate independently of each other, but they fall under this super ombudsman.
And it's my understanding that they're all in that one office space. The space is much larger than what the separate bodies had.
Yeah. The question that the Oversight Committee needs to ask of the Ombudsman is, was it necessary to spend this amount of money in the offices that they were going into? Because it is my understanding that those offices were already well equipped with good furniture and well laid out by the recently refurbished by the firm that vacated the space so they could get it. And I think that's the question that but I think the Oversight Committee does have, certainly when it comes to the PAC, we have oversight of equity and et cetera, and the Auditor General is not allowed to go out and do whatever they want to do without prior approval from the Public Accounts Committee. Okay.
I'll go ahead and put the question. Those in favor of TCC
Hello.
1. Oops.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Maybe the ombudsman law does not, and I know some reason why I objected to this. The law does not have an oversight over administration. It has oversight over the duties of investigation and reports and what have you, but what do you lawyers say? In the absence of provision, people do what they want, right? You don't mount a defense unless your name is called. There's nothing in here to stop that, providing who there is nothing. Who's representing this department in Parliament? Because I recall the deputy governor sponsoring the amalgamation, this bill, yeah. But there is nothing, and Mr. Chairman, I briefly scanned through this, which I usually do fairly fast, but I don't see anything about budgetary stuff and who that. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel, even if it is a train coming. The cabinet may make regulations subject to affirmative resolution for giving effect to the provisions of this law. So maybe the cabinet can make some regulations. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just think to the point that the member has mentioned about the administrative situation, as I said earlier, and has been confirmed to me by, I think, the CFO that deals with this appropriation. This is something that is, the actual budget was brought by the Deputy Governor. So the administration of this department with respect to procurement, those type of decisions, budgeting goes via the Deputy Governor's office. The Oversight Committee, we are charged with the responsibility of looking at, once the budgets have been approved, then looking at the spend versus what is said it should be spent versus what is actually. So that's where the looking at the prospective investigations and whatever other line items versus what then, and looking at what was actually done from a quarterly basis of looking forward as well as looking back. So the quarterly reports talk about what they actually did versus then the budget of what they expect to do. But the actual budgeting process is handled by the Office of the Deputy Governor. So when it comes to actually looking at the plans, that's, and unfortunately, I'm not sure we have the Ombudsman here or anyone that is able to give more direction with respect to the actual process. I think that's what's being asked in this case, but the reporting of the spend is done at the Oversight Committee level.
Mr. Chairman, that revelation is mind-boggling again. Here we are trying to get the Legislative Assembly away from the Deputy Governor, and we put one right back underneath it. What you're doing, changing Black Dog for Marker, same thing. Mr. Chairman, maybe the minister can, now that this has come up, there has to be an oversight here, meaning we didn't see what we were doing when we did this. And somebody didn't recognize that, because the Auditor General has to submit their budget to the PAC prior to it being transmitted to the executive. Maybe we need to make some provision like that in here, and there's nothing wrong with us having made a mistake to be able to correct it, because that needs to be corrected, whether it's in the regulations, because it is Section 6 gives absolute authority and power, like the DPP. No one shall inquire into but that's on the responsibility of receiving objections and what have you, operational independence, but that doesn't extend to expenditure, financial expenditure. So maybe the cabinet needs to do that, and whether it's going to go to cabinet or it goes to the oversight committee, it needs to be done quickly.
If there are no further questions, I put all those in favor of TCC 1, public interest investigations, negative 100.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, there appears to be an error in these numbers. If I can invite Mr. I'm trying to remember his title. Yeah, Matthew. Yeah, Accountant General to address that, so we can rectify it now before we take the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. Mr. Chair, there's a slight amendment that's needed in regards to TCC 1. Instead of being reduced by 161,787, it should actually be reduced by 561,787. This is because there was a slight error in the roll-up. In addition to this change, there needs to be a change to CIV 14, which is support for commissions. That would need to increase by 400,000. So essentially there's a reduction of 400,000 to TCC 1, public interest investigations, and an increase to CIV 14, support for commissions, for 400,000. CIV 14 would be under the Deputy Governor, under the portfolio of the Civil Service. It's in relation to the Commission's Secretariat.
Mr. Chairman.
So if I could,
Yeah.
let me just get this right. With him, you're saying that TCC1, the number should be a negative 561,787.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
And then we go back now to page,
CIV 14.
yeah, page 16, CIV 14.
CIV 14 is currently not listed, but it should be listed under CIV 10 on page 16 is what I see.
Okay. So we need to have another output group here, CIV 14.
Correct. And the wording is support for commissions.
But wasn't the big thing to do this because we were going to save money? It was sold.
All-
Ombudsman was created, according to the deputy governor, to save money.
And we are to increase that amount by 400,000.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I just want to provide a little explanation or with respect to what the leader of the opposition has said about saving money. The functions of the ombudsman, the overarching responsibility, now includes one major function which was not previously there, which is we had a police complaints system, which was, to say it was unsatisfactory would be an understatement, which this now is supposed to address. Of course, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I haven't heard anything negative so far, but I don't think it's been in operation long enough for us to make that assessment. So you're not comparing, there's not direct comparisons with the previous. It's not a matter of just looking at what the previous costs of the Complaints Commissioner and the Freedom of Information Commissioner were and saying, well, this is more than that. That's not the only thing you got to do. Yep. But that's not, no, the Police Complaints Commission was not part, I mean, the Complaints Commission was not part of the, yeah, the police complaints, that wasn't part of the, of any consideration previously.
Mr. Chairman.
But that's what he was saying. He said, well, like 100 and some thousand less. Right in the letter? You know what I mean?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Can this honorable house or honorable members get an undertaking that we'll get a breakdown of this spend on this office refurbishment? I mean, I know there's an oversight committee, but ultimately, everything's a subset of this house. At least I like to have an idea where this money went.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I certainly, as chair of the committee, as I said, made up of several members of this House, I will certainly, as far as I know, the Ombudsman is making herself available to answer these questions, but if that's not done in a timely fashion, I will certainly get you the information that you're requesting and give members of this Honourable House a breakdown based on what we either will be receiving or have received in this regard.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We really need to do something about this law. It says any fees or allowances paid under subsection 2 shall be paid out of the funds appropriated to the Office of the Ombudsman. Who appropriates them? Wow. I know this was rushed.
So our commitment, Minister Rivers, is that we'll get the information to.
Mr. Chair, I have been informed, although I have not had the opportunity to speak to her directly, that she is on her way. So if the committee wants to have an opportunity to ask those questions directly, we can move on. Or if you are satisfied with getting the information at a later point in writing as requested by the member, we can proceed along those lines as well. But I mean, I'm totally at the well, the suggestion, the will, the view, the entreaties of this committee on this particular point. So again, if members, again, as I'm going back to the point, this is about the appropriation. Let us not forget, this is the appropriation of $500,000. So if we are happy with the member from Bawden Towns West's request as to getting information on the breakdown at a later point of the actual spends, I'm happy to facilitate that with the information being provided by the Office of the Ombudsman.
Yep. Well, we'll undertake to get the information for the member as she had requested.
Mr. Chair, the Ombudsman is here and can speak to this point in more detail. So if you would allow me to give her an opportunity to address the particular question about the allocation of the $500,000 in this way.
Madam Ombudsman, may I ask you to take a seat here at the Good afternoon, ma'am. May I ask you to state your name and your position for the record? And I think you need to turn your microphone on. There.
My name is Sandy Hermiston, and I'm the Ombudsman.
Thank you, ma'am. Members of the committee, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir. We're trying to understand the breakdown of how we get to $500,000 budget or budgeted amount for refurbishment for the office. Where did that number come from?
Mr. Chair, we went to the Department of Public Works with the proposed project and asked them to put together an estimate of how much it would cost, and that's the estimate that they came up with.
Can you just go into further detail of what refurbishment means? Are you talking about outfitting the office, or are you talking about adding furnishings, chairs, and the like? Answer that, then I'll answer the next question.
Yes, sir. Through the project entails finishing the actual premises that we're going to be using and furniture, because we're moving from an environment where everyone had offices, and that furniture can't be reused in an open office environment. So we're moving to more of the government standard where most of the people are in those pod situations. You can't make pods out of regular desks, so it includes the furniture that goes with that.
I'm assuming those would be sold afterwards.
The furniture that we have? Certainly.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, what kind of square footage are we talking about in terms of size, and also how many offices are we talking about, and how many staff in total are we talking about? Thank you.
I didn't bring my documents with me, and I apologize for that. It's on the fifth floor of Anderson Square. It's about the similar size to the office of the Auditor General. There will be 3 offices. There'll be one for me and one for each of the deputies. Everyone else will be in a pod situation. I am not yet fully staffed, so we are only buying the furniture for the positions that we will be using at the moment. And there's extra space for the positions that have been budgeted for but that we haven't filled yet. One of the reasons we haven't filled them is that I'm not satisfied how many we actually need. When the office was put together, they made a best guess about which kind of staff I would need to do which function. And I need to look at what the work actually looks like before I want to fully staff. So we're adding in positions as we see them required. So for example, I had 2 positions for the police oversight. I only staffed 1. We see that we have a huge workload on the police complaints side, so we're adding the 2nd position and staffing it shortly. We have a number of positions that have been funded and approved for data protection. I just hired the first data protection staff beginning in September. So I'm trying to take a principled approach to the hiring of the staff in order to assure the government that we aren't having staff with nothing to do. But there is the potential that we will have that staff, and it seemed to me to be irresponsible to try to fit out premises that would be too small for what the potential number of staff would be. So the saw-off, I suppose you could say, is that currently we will have a bit more space than we have for the number of people, but we won't have to do this again because we have enough space for the total number of people that have been approved as being part of the Ombudsman staff.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of clarifying something, I did say I went over this quite quickly, and I want to thank someone from on the outside who sent it to me. 6.3 says, for the purpose of establishing the budget of the Office of the Ombudsman shall report and be accountable for expenditure to the Oversight Committee of the Legislative Assembly. Remember, I said there wasn't, so that was my mistake. But it is, the provisions are in here.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I understood that the Ombudsman said that for the open concept, the desk that they're going to be using couldn't be reused from the old location because of a new concept. And an open concept has a lot less walls, which is a lot less refurbishment to do. Are other things being reused, like the computers and potentially the chairs? So what kind of desk are we getting that costs $500,000?
Oh, the furniture would be $80,000. And the rest is for the demolition of the existing space and building the walls. Now, I might also say that that was just an estimate, and I expect that in the end, it will not cost that much. Public Works has been working with us very closely to ensure that we don't expend too much. It's a pretty simple renovation. They take some walls down, they put a few up. And so in the end, I would be surprised if it, I mean, I'm not Public Works and I don't have the expertise to know, but I expect that it will be under budget.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just roughly of the $500,000 that's been budgeted, do you have any idea how much has been spent thus far?
If I may, at this point, we actually haven't spent anything. Our furniture tender has been, it was awarded just recently, I believe, but I would have to ensure that that was accurate through Public Works. And the demolition just started.
Mr. Chairman, what we used to have before? Cash accounting. That could be used then, but nowadays, accrual accounting. This has been over since the 31st day of December 2017. How is the Ombudsman office getting money now? Because in this budget, 2018, we only have 110,000. What is going on? The Ombudsman cannot complete her office. Impossible if it was going to require 500 and we only got 110. It's impossible.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
We entered into a service level agreement with the Department of Public Works at the end of December of 2017, and that money was paid over to the Department of Public Works before the end of 2017.
Ah, Mr. Chairman, I got it all now. Now I understand. We have moved from the cash accounting, where we used to deal with it that way, to now everybody knows the loophole in this one. So you paid Public Work and Public Work paid on. Now I understand. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm a bit confused. Because if we do come under budget, but we've already paid the money to Public Works, how does that work?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I spoke with my Chief Financial Officer, and I am no accountant, so I can't pretend to be an expert on this, but my understanding is that there will still be an accounting for that money, and whatever is left goes back to the government at the end of the project. Hopefully it'll be done by then.
I can't account for what Public Works is doing.
Mr. Chairman, you know I could not do them together. That's mine and the premier problem. We could never add nor subtract. But the two you were full-fledged accountants in here, isn't that what accrual accounting for? That you pay when the service has been received. How is it that, and I'm talking about Ombudsman.
Thank you.
How is it that government is getting around this by sending them money over Public Works? And they holding it there. They got back up there one. Mr. Chairman, I know that people watching this are wondering what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is, without any disrespect to the Ombudsman, it appears like we have now taken accrual accounting, and you know, sir, I'm not anything to do with accounting. I can do formulas, engineering, but that's it. Accrual accounting, as I understand it, you pay when the services are rendered. That's how you understand. That cash, they used to hold it someplace else. Nowadays, it appears like all of the government departments or ministries or whatever are forwarding this money over to public work and paying them as if the service is from them, but they're holding the money there until they can get over to do it, which is after the end of the accrual period. Mr. Chairman, I don't know, sir, you need to do something about this as the financial
I don't think you're correct that everybody has done it or is doing it.
No.
And I think that's what you said.
If I said everybody, sir, please forgive me. I meant it appears like, because I've heard of this before, and this is the second time I'm hearing of it, and that needs to stop.
Mr. Chairman,
Because, Mr. Chairman, you know this budget will,
Actually, give it to the minister, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
the actuals on this is going to be, on this budget, is going to be way off, unless some serious accounting has been done.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to clarify, if you can, whether or not anyone else except the Ombudsman has carried out this procedure, because I don't think that's a fair aspersion to be left hanging in this chamber, and then I'll follow up.
I can say categorically I was not aware of any other ministry or any other department doing that.
And is there any special provision or exceptional circumstances that one can expend money without the services being rendered? Because I'd like to know.
If there's any special dispensation for, okay. I'm going to let the FS respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I said quietly to you, I can respond as to how I believe it should be done, which isn't going to help us with how it is actually been done in this instance. I think we are all aware that budgets are for the course of a financial year. And once the end of the financial year is reached, any unspent portions of budgets cease and die, and they do not automatically carry forward into the following year. So if we have a budget of $100 for a particular expenditure, and by the end of the financial year we have spent only $35, the remaining $65 is unspent, it dies. And the proper course of action is that if the project is unfinished and needs to continue into the following year, the proper course is to budget the expenditure in that following year. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the particular entity entering into a contract to have those services in the year in which it wants the work done. It simply needs to then normally budget for the continuation of the work into the new year. It would appear as what has happened in this particular instance is that the $500,000 was budgeted for a financial period that would end the 31st of December 2017. The value of work done to the 31st of December 2017 was not equal to $500,000, and there was, I would imagine, quite a bit of unspent element of the $500,000. What I understand to have taken place is that that budget was completely drawn down, and the funds from that budget not paid over to the external contractor, but actually paid into a bank account that Public Works would control. So the funds were still within the ambit and the control of the government by the 31st of December 2017. And then the work continued on into 18, and the work was being paid in 2018 from that existing portion of the $500,000 that had been drawn down by December. That is what my understanding of the situation is, and we know from the budgets for 2018 and 2019, the equity investments to the Ombudsman Office is approximately $110,000. So that I don't think that was intended to cover the particular transaction that we're talking about now. I do not believe that that practice is unique to the Ombudsman Office.
Mr. Chairman, what a sweet explanation. But let me ask them, since I am not an accountant, how, Mr. Chairman, this is to your portfolio, your ministry, how are you balancing the budget of the government with another entity holding $500,000 in their bank account that was supposed to be spent last year? How do you reconcile that with your actuals for December 31st, 2017? How is that reconciled, sir? Now, I understand, sir, if we had paid that to a private contractor out there, then you could reconcile it by saying it has been expended. But it's still within the ambit of the core government holdings, and you cannot reconcile it, in my view, until that money has been expended, or it is put into surplus or whatever you want to put it in, or the reserves, whichever way that go. You can't have one entity having an account. The last time I recall this was the Premier and I talking about the police force and one particular man using money out of his back pocket. That's like Public Works having a back pocket that they can pull money out anytime they want. You can't have that. We cannot have that.
Mr. Chair, I think it's obvious that we found that there was some sort of failure in respect to a practice through one of our own departments. Can we just, I mean, obviously it's happened already. I don't know what the process is to rectify it moving forward. And an important question brought by the member from East End is the balancing of the budgets and whether they were now accurate because of how things were done. I don't know what the process is, but you are the finance minister and the chair of the committee today. I don't know if you can give us some direction, because I too am lost, and I would also like to know that there's a commitment that this doesn't happen anymore moving in the future.
Well, I mean, I think that while the process might not have been strictly correct, I think at the end of the day there is no funds that have gone missing, or because the funds are still there, they still show up in the government's bank accounts at the end of the year, albeit instead of being in the office of the Ombudsman, it's in the office of the PWD. So between the two entities, now this is my thinking, having paid the money over, they would show it. One would show a prepayment in their accounts, and that would be the office of the Ombudsman, and in the accounts of the PWD, they would show a related liability. As well, having received the cash and not expended them for the purposes for which they were intended.
Mr. Chairman.
Yet.
But Mr. Chairman, only you should have cash reserves or surplus after reconciliation of that year accounts. Only you. Now Public Works can't have no bank account.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
That's why we're here.
Mr. Chairman, first let me just say that I am unaware of the situation. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. I am going to go out on a limb and say that I believe this would be with what is considered the major projects section of Public Works, which falls under Public Works, but the project managers within that major projects office are subcontracted in a sense to the whatever project they're working on, so they work directly with those departments. So I have asked my team to get the details from our end of it, but I certainly had no knowledge of it from Public Works.
Mr. Chairman, I hear the minister, and I believe the minister the same way I believe that you don't know that, because I understand the authorities, NRA, and those guys, they are private entities, quote unquote. So you can pay them to get work done, and they're delayed in getting your work done, so you should sue them. But not another core government department. That is not to happen. On the 31st day of December, 2017, their account should have said zero. And at some stage, at 12 o'clock that night, it should have jumped up with the budget. From a zero, it go to positive, with the amounts of money to be spent from the first day of January 2018 to the first day of December. They are not to have a positive other than that which we approve here prior to the 31st day of December. And they cannot, and they must not, have a bank account out in the middle of Georgetown as if they have a back pocket and working out of that, plus working out of the budget that the people's representative approved, whether it was the 1st of December or the end of or the 1st of October. They cannot do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tibbetts, I think you said.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just like to note that we are in agreement that this was not done correctly, and something we're going to do this year to ensure this doesn't reoccur is have internal audit service, which falls under the Deputy Governor, review all transactions close to year end, so this kind of practice doesn't reoccur in future. When we introduced accrual accounting, we did it for the first few years until people got used to the practice, understanding that this wasn't supposed to happen. It seems it's now become a loophole. Not a regular practice, but it seems that it can happen. So we'll ensure that a control is put in place that it does not reoccur.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just through you, sir, I'm just trying to understand the genesis of this transaction. If the money wasn't spent by the end of the year, who made the decision then to transfer $500,000 from one government department to the next in order for this to be drawn down on? Because technically, this is now a 2018 expenditure because the money died. So I'm trying to understand who consciously made that decision to depart from the process to transfer this money.
That Max Jones, sometimes got choke him, you know.
If Mr. Chair, I entered into a service level agreement that said that we were to pay over the $500,000, and pursuant to that agreement, we paid the $500,000.
Mr. Chair, my understanding that the department asked the ombudsman for the money?
It was the terms of the agreement.
They operate as contractors.
Mr. Chairman, just to get some closure to this and move on, can you ask internal audit to take a look and see exactly what happened here? Because this, I mean, people need to understand that the reason we have these hearings is that when we vote on something, It is a legal authorization for the government to do something. And when someone departs from it, it's going against what it is that we have voted for inside here. So we really want to understand what has happened here and get a full breakdown and have this reported back to the House.
I'm happy to take that on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with us arresting this thing, pardon the pun, now. But this is a legal entity and people can go to jail for it if it's being abused. We don't know what that money is being used for. And we cannot trust anyone. We don't know if it is not already expended and then they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We don't know. We have made a law in this country saying that on the 31st day of December, that monies must be totally expended or turned back into the Minister for Finance. And he will allocate that in whatever category, whether it's surplus or whatnot have you. And we have people, at least in this case, we don't even know how much it is. The auditor, the ombudsman doesn't even know how much it is. They cannot, Public Works cannot write an agreement with another government entity to say they got turn over the money to them. They cannot do that.
Mr. Chairman, I think at this point, and I'm speaking on behalf of all of the members of the Oversight Committee, and as best as my memory serves me correctly, and anybody can come in if that's not the case, this actual, what happened was not necessarily discussed at the, and approved or even dealt with at the Oversight Committee level. As I said, when we look at approving budgets, it's prospectively, and then when, you know, the reports are done after the fact with respect to the actual operations. But this is the first time that we've been given this level of detail as to what has transpired.
Well, these are just budgeted amounts. I mean,
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Ombudsman.
If I may, today is the first anniversary of my office, so I have to say that I'm not excited to be here and be in this situation where there's such a controversy involving the office, because I think that the office was put into place for very good reason. So I would like to offer my apologies for creating a situation that is causing so much distress. I would also like to confirm that the chair of the Oversight Committee is correct. It wasn't discussed at the Oversight Committee. The Oversight Committee started meeting, I think our first meeting was November, and we hadn't worked out our process yet because this was also very new. I came in September. We had a significant under expenditure in my office, and I was expected to get a new office put in place before the end of December, which was, quite frankly, just impossible. So I sought solutions for trying to have funding in order to do that. In my naivete, because the accounting system here is quite different from from Canada, I wasn't familiar with the process, and I made a mistake, and I'll take responsibility for that. It certainly wasn't intended to circumvent process or be underhanded or hide money, because that is, my office will never be part of that kind of a thing, and I just need to assure you that that was never the intent. So I apologize for my mistake. I understand that I could have turned back more money and then asked for additional funding this year, and I wish I had.
Mr. Chairman, I will not take an apology from this the lady called ombudsman, because it's not her fault. Her apologies I don't need, because it's not her fault. She's new in this. It is the fault of Public Works, because they know they're not supposed to do it. And they cornered the ombudsman into a situation where they made her sign agreements, which she must honor, to send the money to them and they'll get the job done. It is wrong.
Mr. Chair, if I may, no one corners me into anything. I made a mistake. The Public Works, no one, I'm independent. The Public Works Department can't make me do anything. I understood that it was a practice that had been in the past, and I entered into it thinking it was legitimate, and I believe they thought it was legitimate as well, but they didn't corner me. And so again, it was my mistake. I should have done more work, and I am truly sorry, but I did not feel that I was being trapped or cornered or anything like that.
Mr. Chair,
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think, no due respect to the Ombudsman, I think the member from East End was actually trying to be kind by saying, truly, it could still have been avoided by a department that have the experience and the knowledge that this practice is not appropriate. So even if she wanted to sign, the offer should never have been there, is what the member from East End is suggesting. But I do believe that the fact that whoever from the financial control element within the department has to answer to something, because this is not an accepted practice, no longer at least. They didn't do it the year before, or the budget before. So there has to be a reason given to this House as to why it happened now. And it draws concerns. I don't know how else to get around that, but we have to now deal with the fact that there's potential chance that the monies will be under budget based on the Ombudsman's suggestions. How is that money now going to get back to the Ombudsman's budget?
Chairman, I just want to say to the Ombudsman, I appreciate her admitting that it's her mistake. Maybe my choice of words were not as suited as they should have been. But let me put it this way. The fact that the Public Works Department, you engage with them, it's their contract, and you were signed it to get a job done. Maybe it's not cornered, but they know that's not supposed to be done.
Okay.
And I am giving you the benefit of the doubt because you're new.
Thank you.
And they are not. They are very long on the tooth and high on the horn. They have been here a long time. And their job is to ensure these things never happen. I am going to leave this now up to the chairman and the financial secretary and his assistant, Mr. Tibbetts, that provisions be put in place and training be done pronto.
Thank you, and we want to move on at this time.
Mr. Chair, I beg your indulgence, just for clarity, because I don't want to wrongfully accuse. Can the Ombudsman clarify that the work wasn't projected to be finished before the year budget was ended? They knew that the work would be for after the budget year ended, because that would make a difference. If the Public Works Department thought that they were planning to have this work done before the budget end, then they wouldn't have been creating a wrongdoing within the accounting principle. But if they knew, based on conversations with the Ombudsman, this work will not be commenced and the money collection for the works won't be happening in this budget year, they would have known that would be a wrong move. So I don't know if the Ombudsman can say whether there was projections to have the work done before the end of the budget cycle, which we're talking about now, which ended in December of 2017.
Mr. Chair, the agreement was signed in December. Beginning beginning of December, I think, is the
Members of
date
the committee, I think we've aired this thoroughly, and we have made a commitment that we'll get to the bottom of it and institute whatever controls need to be put in place to ensure that this does not happen. And that's the best commitment I think that we can give. So we'd like to move on and seek. I think it's still important. We need to seek to approve these. I'd ask for the members' commitment to let's move it forward, get it done, and then we'll take it from there. So. And so I'm going to put the question to the committee. TCC1, Public Interest Investigations, negative $561,787. TCC2, Policy Advice and Public Education Outreach, negative $112,127. OBM1, Public Interest Investigations, $800,878. ICO1, Compliance with Freedom of Information Legislation, negative $6. I'm sorry. Okay. Negative $639,080. Standing part of the schedule to the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. All of those against, no. The ayes have it. Pardon? Yeah. So we can deal with this one too, right? Yeah. Okay. EI 75, Office of the Ombudsman, 500. All those in favor of EI 75, Office of the Ombudsman, for $500,000. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Those against?
No.
No.
I think the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
EI 75.
Better have a division there.
Okay. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman.
Deputy Premier.
I think there's quite a bit of confusion still on this. The way that it has been explained is that the amount that is reflected in this budget, some of it has been already used and spent. Correct? So out of this vote that is being asked to be authorized for 17, this is a budget that some has been spent out of. We don't know how much has been spent out of it. You've given a commitment that you would look at the audit and reflect it. There's also $100,000 in the 2018 budget, which you are going to bring in December of 2018.
Deputy Premier, that's already been approved. Oh, changes? Yeah, yes, we will be bringing a supplementary appropriation bill.
Just for procedure, we've already voted. I think you need to get a request from the Deputy Premier to reopen the debate, and then you can make a contribution. I don't think you can just, in the middle of what has been taken.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm not saying that, but I think you need to make sure that it is recorded properly in the.
Mr. Chairman, before we take the division, I would like to ask if we can have some more clarity on what we're going to vote on, if members are okay with that.
Well, the matter before us is the Deputy Premier, is this $500,000 that was approved by Cabinet last year with regard to EI 75, Office of the Ombudsman. That's what we're seeking approval for. One moment.
Which page?
Page 11. Right.
Well, at this point, we do not know how much it is, right? Leaving it at $500,000 is no harm that I can see with regard to it. We deal with it. We know that it's not spent.
Mr. Chairman, before I cast my vote, could you just help me to understand this a little bit better? Who approved the account to be set up?
I'm not following you, Minister. The account for the $500,000. I don't know the.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that $500,000 would have been appropriated and approved in cabinet.
So, Mr. Chairman, again, I want to finish my thought. Is this money is in the 17. Some has been spent out of it. The commitment that is being given by the office is that an audit will be done, and the time that we have to clean up this is at 18 when you reflect how much was spent out of this 500,000 along with the 100,000 that's in the budget. Is that correct, my assumption? So in December this would be cleaned up, audited, and we'd have an understanding of it.
That is the opportunity before us to get this done.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
But Mr. Chairman, should in further clarification of what the Mr. Colonel is saying, and carrying that further, there is money someplace that we know nothing of, because public works accounts should have been to zero, should not have a positive reflection on that day, on the 31st day of December 2017 at 12 o'clock that night.
Yeah, but what I was saying is that their accounts would reflect what is unspent, that they would have been holding at.
But what kind of accounts?
Pardon?
What kind of accounts?
It would be in their cash account. I mean, if they've got cash, and then they would show related liability.
But we accrual? What kind of accounts would they have?
And Mr. Chairman, haven't the committee gone through all this already?
We have been through it. We seem to be relitigating the whole thing at this point.
But Mr. Chairman,
so
now
we are taking
remember now the Deputy Premier brought this back up about it being cleaned up this year, and it's not cleaned up. It cannot get cleaned up.
But we agreed that we would try.
Not on paper.
We would get that done. We're not going to get it done here today. We can't. But we are going to take the vote on this, and we've asked the clerk now to take the division. Madam Clerk.
Honourable Alda McLaughlin. Honourable Moses Kirkconnell. You want to hear?
Aye.
Honourable Juliana Connolly. Honourable Dwayne Seymour.
Abstain.
Honourable Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honourable Tara Rivers.
Aye.
Honourable McKeeva Bush.
Aye.
Honourable Barney Bush. No. Kempton Eugene Ebanks.
Aye.
Miss Barbara Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. David White.
Aye.
Mr. Austin Harris. Honourable Ezra Miller. No. Mr. Alva Suku.
No.
Mr. Kenneth Bryan.
Abstain.
Mr. Anthony Eden.
No.
Mr. Christopher Saunders.
No.
Mr. Arden McLean.
No.
The results of the division are 7 ayes, 6 noes, 2 abstentions, and 3 absentees. No? No, Chair doesn't vote. So I declare that the matter is approved. Members of the committee, we have one other matter to deal with, and that is approval for CIV number 14. That is appropriation of changes arising from exceptional circumstances, appropriations to the Deputy Governor. My apologies to you, Madam Ombudsman. You're excused from the committee at this time. Thank you for coming. We can now proceed to take a vote on the final item, which is a correction of an error that we needed in the appropriations on page 12 of the paper, 16 of the paper that you have before you. Appropriation changes arising from post-general election reorganization of government appropriations to the Deputy Governor. To that schedule, we need to add CIV 14, support for commissions of $400,000. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I put it to the vote. All those in favor of CIV 14, support for commissions, $400,000, please say aye. Aye. Are those against? No. The ayes have it. Members of the committee, this concludes this section of Finance Committee. The items shown on the schedule to the bill are now approved. In accordance with Standing Order 64.4, I shall put the question as to whether honourable members approve of the schedule forming part of the bill. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The schedule now stands part of the bill. The schedule, as amended, now stands part of the bill. Next, we have to consider the clauses in the bill. In accordance with Standing Order 64.5, I shall put the question as to whether the honourable members approve of Clause 1 standing part of the bill. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clause 1 now stands part of the bill. Similarly, I put the question in Clause 2 of the bill. And the question is whether honourable members approve of Clause 2 standing part of the bill. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clause 2 now stands part of the bill. In accordance with Standing Order 47, I shall put the question as to whether I, as chairman of the committee, do report the bill to the House. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The bill shall be reported to the House. Yes. Members of the committee, we also have before us a request to Finance Committee for appropriation changes under Section 12 of the Public Management and Finance Law 2018 revision. Members have been provided with a copy of this request. There are 2 items that are being requested. One is an amount of $1.9 million under the output supplier for the Ministry of Health and Environment, Culture and Housing to develop in support of the green iguana culling program that is about to be commenced. The second item for consideration is an increase in the output supplier, Cayman Islands Overseas Hospitals and Other Caregiving Institutions, NGS 55, tertiary care at local and overseas institutions for $8 million. No, a correction, please. it is $6,500,000. We also, if those items are approved, we would also be seeking to move a motion for the to seek that the funds for the green iguana culling be moved, be appropriated from the Environmental Protection Fund. So HES 21, Environmental Search Services and Research, seeking an increase in an appropriation of $1.9 million for the 2018 financial year. Minister for the Environment, do you wish to give you the opportunity to make that motion? I understand he will move the motion at the appropriate time. Yeah, we're looking for the approval now. I just wondered whether he wanted to give him the opportunity to make a statement if he would like. I don't
Mr.
think.
Chair, 1 second, please.
Yes.
You can sneak up on me, yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this opportunity to seek the approval of the Finance Committee for the dispersal of $1.9 million from the Environmental Protection Fund to cover expenses for the invasive green iguana culling project. Mr. Chairman, as members of the committee will be aware, Grand Cayman is suffering from explosive population increase of invasive green iguanas, which now number approximately 1.1 million and are now threatening to reach approximately 4.6 million by 2020 unless massive control measures are implemented very soon. The government decided to take measures now to begin reducing the invasive green iguana population. This will initially require the removal of 588,000 green iguanas over 12 months starting in October 2018. Initially, Mr. Chairman, the budget awarded to the Department of Environmental fell short of what was requested. The HES 21 budgeted funding for the project was for 2018 was initially $400,000, while the HES 21 budgeted funding for the project in 2019 is $1.1 million. Mr. Chairman, the contract with the successful management company for the project will be for at least 12 months, and based on our estimates, the current budgeted amounts for financial year 2018 were inadequate to cover the green iguana culling costs in the period. Therefore, a supplementary amount was sought for the 60-day culling period in 2018. It was therefore necessary, Mr. Chairman, for the ministry to obtain their supplementary funding at this time in order to ensure that the request for proposals is able to attract suitable local companies to fulfill the scope of services. By law, the RFP has to be advertised for at least 15 days. However, due to complexity of this contract, the Central Procurement Office recommended to DOE that the RFP be advertised for 21 days. Mr. Chairman, the RFP was advertised on the 29th of August, 2018, and the earliest the DOE can begin reviewing respondents is 21st of September 2018. It is anticipated that DOE can expect to sign a contract with the management company in early October 2018. Mr. Chairman, the additional funding from the EPF of $1.9 million is to meet the projected 60-day shortfall in 2018, and the DOE will continue on with the culling in 2019 based on the already approved funds of $1.1 million. Once the culling has commenced, the department with the direction and appointed project steering committee will evaluate the effectiveness of the project after the first few reporting periods to determine whether to make request for further supplementary funding in 2019 to extend the culling beyond the approved 2019 funding. With the supplementary in 2018, the approved project cost will be 3.4 million, including 2019. Members of the committee will be aware, Mr. Chairman, that the Environmental Protection Fund was created on the 10th of December 1997 by Government Motion number 1497 for the purpose of defraying expenditure incurred in protecting and preserving the environment of the islands. It is required that disbursements from this fund may only be made in accordance with resolutions by the Standing Finance Committee and under the authority of the Minister of Finance for the purpose of defraying expenditure incurred in protecting and preserving the environment of these islands. Mr. Chairman, Cabinet directed the Minister of Finance is to be authorized to disperse up to 1.9 million from the Environmental Protection Fund to cover expenditures to be incurred with respect to the invasive green iguana culling project. Mr. Chairman, the expenditures totaling 1.9 million that are expected to be incurred in the 2018 financial year are to be recognized as being in the interests of protecting and preserving the environment of these islands. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister of the Environment. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yes, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, in his presentation, the Honorable Minister talks about a management company. Are we hiring a management company to manage the culling of the iguanas, other than the department itself?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the Chief Officer to answer this question, please. Thanks.
Come over.
Go ahead, Chief Officer, but please state your name and your position for the record.
Yes, Jennifer Ahern. I'm the Chief Officer in the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing. Through you, Mr. Chair, the Department of Environment has issued an RFP for a contract for the management of the culling exercise, so that management will be done by a private company.
Is it possible to provide the committee with how this culling is going to be done? Are ordinary Caymanians going to get an opportunity to be involved in killing these iguanas and getting compensated for it, or is the management company has employees which is going to do all the killing, or what? Can we get an idea of how it's going to be managed?
I don't understand.
As we understand it, and it's intended by caucus and cabinet, that every Caymanian should have an opportunity to participate in the iguana culling.
So, and how is that expected to be happening? Are we in a situation where only Caymanians with gun license and business license will qualify, or it doesn't matter how you kill the iguana, as long as you show up to this management company and you have a dead iguana, you'll get, is it per iguana, or is it per pound, or what is the compensation method?
It's per head, and as I understand it, Mr. Chair, there's a bit of training that needs to go on in terms of safety. Not only air rifles will be used, but also snares and other methods, as long as you bring the head in. But it's intended that, well, DOE doesn't have the capacity to manage the massive approach that we're going to take in trying to deplete this green iguana and culling them. So it was suggested that we needed a company to manage and to also help train up any Caymanian that wanted to participate in this project.
And what are the requirements to qualify? Or how does one apply for this training? And is this a local company that has the contract to manage this?
Yeah, no one has it as yet, and you have to be Caymanian.
Yeah.
And,
Part of the, you don't have a copy of the RFP here, do you? Is part of the RFP requirement that the company must be Caymanian, or?
1 second for me, please.
Yeah, I know. Objecting to the process.
Mr. Chair, I'll have the director of DOE answer this as the document is quite comprehensive, and she can probably paraphrase this much better than I can. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while they're going to answer them through you, the company, we would like to know, and I would like to volunteer about 25 to 30 children at the West Bay Primary that's going to teach people to catch iguanas without any guns, without any sticks, anything.
Okay. Madam Director, can you state your name and your position and before you answer the question?
Gina Ebanks Petrie, I'm the Director for the Department of Environment. So I think it's important to separate the RFP for the management of the culling, the project, and the culling itself. So the company that, the requirements for the company to manage the project, they actually have to have a local trade and business license. So hopefully that means that they are Caymanian. And the colors themselves will be registered. They were also asking that they're Caymanian and over 18. That's the only qualifications for the colors.
But the company is going to manage and certify or train the persons that, and do you have to be pre-certified before you can get paid for bringing a dead iguana?
We're asking everybody who's interested in culling the iguanas to come. Well, we will be asking when we do the call for the registration, that anybody who's interested in culling, come and register. The reason behind that is that we have to set a quota for each color so that we can have some assurance that over the period of the year, we're actually making some headway in reducing the numbers of iguanas at a level that will actually overwhelm the reproductive capacity of the population.
Why? So if I want to cull iguanas, I'll have to come and attend a training course.
We're not requiring cullers to be trained.
Okay, but I got to come and register, and you will give me the opportunity to kill 500, just using a number. Why is that necessary? Because you're not going to count the iguanas when they bring them in, or?
Yes, that would be the role of the management company. They will be at the landfill to receive iguanas that have been culled. They would be required to keep a track of how many each color is bringing in so that they can then be paid. And the management company will also actually do the payment.
Okay, so why do you need a quota system to determine it? Wouldn't it be better to get a daily count of what has been actually culled?
Yeah, so it's a projected quota. When we register colors, we're interested in those people telling us how many iguanas they think that they have the capacity to cull, either themselves or if they've set up a company, which some of them have, how many they think that they're able to cull, because we need to keep within budget. We also need to have a way of incentivizing the culling of the number of iguanas that we need to have culled in order to have this project be successful, because what we don't want to happen is to spend money and at the end of the day still have a bigger population of iguanas. So we need to, at the next year. So we need, the key point here is that we need to cull at a rate that overwhelms the number of iguanas that are going to be born this year.
Chair.
Mr. Chair. I still don't see don't follow the logic behind that planning exercise, other than because it doesn't matter what quota I give you. I could tell you I could kill 5,000 this week, and I want to bring in 3.
Mr. Chairman, just let me say this. Lord, we've been through all of this, but I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's taken us a long time to get here, but I think I understand.
Okay.
The logic. We have to have some basis of predicting, whatever you want to use, whether or not the program that is in place is capable of achieving the aims that the director just outlined, i.e., that the kill rate exceeds the birth rate. So we're asking those involved in the program, tell us, Mr. Eddie McLean, as an example, how many you think you are going to be able to destroy over the course of a month? And so, no, but so it's not a quota that we're saying that you can't participate if you can't make this. Nobody's suggesting that. It is we're trying to get an idea and to be able to track over the course of the program how accurate those are and make adjustments up or down in terms of the number of colors that are employed. Initially, we know there's going to be a huge amount of interest, but experience teaches us, especially when you talk to those experienced colors, this is hard, bloody work, and they get tired, they get exhausted. So we have to find the means, by one way or the other, to ensure that we're not going to just spend $6, $7, $8 million, whatever this is eventually going to cost, without achieving the overall objective. So we have to be able to assess along the way and as quickly as possible whether or not we are achieving or we are capable of achieving the particular goal that the director just set out. That's all this is. It's not about trying to force colors to do this or that or the other. They're going to have to tell us what they think they can do, and then we have some yardstick by which to measure how well the program is performing.
Okay.
Thank you.
My concern with that is that as long as there is some assurance that somebody who exceeds their quota is not going to be cut off. Which is why I say you don't need a quota, just actual. So this 2.3 million that we're going to spend in the last 2 months of this year, because you don't have the FP done, so you look in October, November, and December, we expect to kill 460,000 iguanas. At $5 a head, 2.3 million.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's that it is the $2.3 million, but it also includes the cost of the management contract, which would at this stage I think probably be the biggest component of that number for this period.
But maybe I'm just looking at the solution too simply. But from where I stand, all you need is one guy sitting down at the dump alongside a big metal container. I walk up with 3 iguanas, I throw them in the bin, he give me $15 and I leave. 5 o'clock that evening, he takes the bin down to the incinerator and burns them up. How is the management company going to dispose of the dead iguanas? That's part of their contract and part of their responsibility? Or does that fall to the landfill?
Let the director answer that.
Mr. Chairman, I got that wrong just now in terms of the director has kindly corrected me that the biggest component of it is actually paying the fee per head for the their iguana. But in terms of disposal, it'll be disposed at the landfill in a designated area which they are preparing for.
As opposed to incineration?
I can't speak to incineration or our ability to do so, but so maybe the minister or somebody else can.
Yes. So, yeah, we spoke with the management at the Department of Environmental Health. They confirmed that it just wasn't going to be possible to incinerate that number of iguanas with the current equipment. If we're still doing this when the new facility comes online, that's a different story. But until then, they will be disposed of in the same way that all dead animals are disposed of, which is basically in an animal pit on the landfill.
Online.
Yeah, and every day the skip that will be receiving the iguanas will be taken there and disposed of by DEH.
Yeah, I see a great opportunity here to protect the conchs and lobsters marine life, particularly in Eastern District, because you can't get $5 for a conch, but you can get $5 for iguana. But if the process of getting registered is too complicated, then it didn't happen. But it's a great opportunity to save the conchs, because it's hard to get $5 for 10 conchs, much less. But is it possible to ask the management company to go out to the Eastern Districts in particular and have a day when people can come to them and register as colours to make it more accessible?
That is something that we can certainly take on board, because the Department of Environment will actually be doing the registration with the management company.
Okay. The other thing is that I would assume that the company that is currently shipping the green iguana meat off island would not be able to accept these because they wouldn't have tracks of when they were killed and how they were killed, and et cetera, et cetera.
Mr. Chair, sorry, thank you. What I would undertake to do, and the leader of the opposition is correct. They haven't been appraised of the full situation. I would undertake to have a briefing session for the opposition, because we want everyone involved in this to ensure it has its best effect. So if they're available at any 1 hour, we can do a presentation for them so they can know the full extent of what we're attempting to do. There's been enough studies done for us to move forward with at least this. And if you see how the government is moving forward, even though this is a method that we have approved to move forward to the end of the year, this will be evaluated, and if it's not working in its intended sense, we will go back to the drawing board and try another method.
Leader of the Opposition, going to ask if you could give way to the member for Savannah. I'm going to come right down and give everybody a chance, honestly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel sure that through you to the Honourable Minister, if you could indicate the approximate amount of these funds which will be used for the early reduction program as suggested by some people, which I know he is aware of.
Can you say again, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was just asking the Honourable Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, approximately how much of these funds will be used for the possibility of the early reduction program that he is being made aware of.
I suggest
that's Mr. Manu Singh.
Yeah, he did do a presentation for me. I really appreciated that, and well appreciated. One of the things that that we haven't talked much about, and I will do, is trying to destroy the eggs before they're hatched. And I think they breed once a year. In July, I stand to be corrected.
Around about that. Yes, they have a breeding season, but we're noticing that that's a rather extended period now.
Yeah. can the director also advise if this amount includes destroying eggs?
No, the current project is really predicated on getting rid of the animals themselves. Isn't something that we contemplated, was not looking for the eggs.
I suggest that we find a method also, even if it's at a lesser price, to reward for eggs. I don't know how you would count a shell.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. I don't know if I can just throw them out there all at the same time, and the director of DOE can answer them. It has been brought to my attention that the most effective way of culling these iguanas is actually through the process of air rifles. That obviously creates some difficulty on island as the numbers of licensed persons for air rifles are very limited simply because of the major restrictions on them, rightfully so. But there have been expressions made to me by many persons with licenses for guns other than air rifles who would like to see the process or incentives given to them to get involved in the culling process and the better good of the country, but the hurdles that is in the way of getting a new license just for the air rifle, so a person can have their own protective gun at home or for their farming purposes, but don't have a air rifle license. But the costs associated with importation, costs associated with the application, and the fee have prevented a lot of them from being involved in the process, and they want to do it not necessarily to collect $5, but just to get rid of the pest. Potentially the boys club, so to speak, going out on the weekend and saying, you know, I'm helping the island. So is there anything that we can do, or has the director of the ministry been doing to help the ministry with that process for those persons who would like to assist, get it either easier by way of reduction in fees and duties? Because I think that would be helpful. Second question, is there anything that we're doing to make sure that the blue iguana is not affected, mistakenly targeted? Because obviously the green iguana is all over the island, but for those who are not trained well enough to identify the differences between the two, we could end up hurting something that we've been treasuring for so long and spent a lot of money on to protect.
Mr. Chair.
I was going to give that to the director. She could
yeah, I just
answer
want
the
to
question.
mention that that's why one of the training components was about trying to identify. Some people don't know the difference between a blue and a green, and things similar to ensuring you don't go close to light wires, CUC wires and poles and etc. We need to ensure that there's some safety mechanisms put in place. Mr. Chair, this can be a very nice program for the whole country in itself, and we understand now they're also in Spot, Bay, Cayman, Brac. But you know, we could put incentives out there, something we haven't really discussed, but there could be incentives to the person who brings in the most, you know, at the end of this program, etc. But our main goal is to cull and to deplete the population, so that we can at least the farmers will be happy about this.
Director?
Well, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In respect to the first question on the reduction of fees and duties, I'm assuming you mean for firearms, for ammunition, etc. That is not something that we're currently working on, simply because we have had to just try to move the whole project forward. It is something that has been in discussion previously at ministerial level. But I don't think that any conclusion sort of was arrived at in terms of freeing up the licensing process, as it were, for firearms. What we have done, I think, as you're aware, is that we've started some discussions with the police about the actual licensing process. And they have given an undertaking to work with us to expedite amendments to licenses currently held by persons. So if you have a firearms license already, then there will need to be some amendments made to that license to make you as effective as possible in the field culling iguanas. One of those being there would have to be some provision to allow you to shoot closer than 40 yards to a public road, for example. That is one condition of licenses currently, normal licenses as I understand it. The other is that typically the licenses prevent firearm holders from shooting in residential areas. So the police have actually agreed that they would work with us to try to expedite those amendments to the licenses of current, the holders of current firearm licenses. People getting new licenses and importing guns and ammunition is something that is going to have to be considered down the road.
Has there been any restrictions in respect to the blue iguanas, like a zoning or anything that you'll say to the cullers, okay, there are limitations, you can't go in this area, let the persons who guard the blue iguanas facility focus in that area? Is there anything like that?
So when people register, one of the things that we will do is there is a short video that we did several years ago now about the difference between greens and blues. We will ensure that everybody sees that. It's just basically knowing the key features to look for. We'll also have a flyer that we can hand out with the same information. And we would obviously not want people accessing the Botanic Park and the Collier's Reserve because that's where we're releasing
Member for East End.
blues.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Chairman, I got so many questions on this that I don't know where to begin. Why are we hiring a management company? My calculation on this cost here, these proposed budget and budgeted amounts, is something about 3.4 million over the next year and a couple of months. And we're looking for 588,000. That's 70 cents going someplace else if you're paying $55 per iguana. Why are we doing this? Why do we need a management company? Tell me. Isn't it simple enough to have somebody down by the dump who can count the numbers that anybody brings in? And it's open season. The objective here, as I understand it, is to eradicate these things. Isn't that the objective? Albeit we want to find out in relation to their birth how much but you can do that, you count them. You know how much dead.
Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are hopefully going to target the removal of about 6,000 iguanas a day. That is what we would like to see in order to affect the reduction that we're planning. In 2016, we ran what is essentially a comparable exercise to what we're proposing now for 2 weeks, and it took all of the DOE staff to handle the reception of the iguanas, and we were receiving about 2,000 iguanas a day at that point. So we just don't have the capacity to manage the number of iguanas that are going to be brought in. We want to be efficient. Most people are going to probably bring the iguanas in at the end of the day when they finish culling, or early in the morning before they start, if they keep them overnight. So there will be a lot of people queuing up to dispose of their iguanas. They're going to have to be counted. They're going to have to receive some type of receipt, and the management company will be obviously required to keep a track of how many iguanas are being brought in by each individual culler so that they can be paid. The other aspect of this is that when we tried to pay people, and this isn't just in 2016, but last year as well, government's payment system really, in terms of a check run, doesn't really lend itself very efficiently to paying people in a timely manner. And it is a problem we have run into every time we've tried to do this. So we have asked the company itself to be responsible for the payment and then invoice us, the government, in arrears for actual numbers of iguanas that have been brought in.
Mr. Chairman, to hear one of the senior head of the department come in here and say government checking system now, payment system now good, I think you need to look in that, so that's first thing. But anyway, that's an aside.
You've had your say on that point, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Member from West Bay? No?
Mr. Chair, you cut me off? Or? Okay. Do we know how much it's going to cost to manage these things? Manage this whole project?
Mr. Chair, we have the RFP out, so we don't really want to disclose our estimate for that even at this point. We're asking people to bid on a scope of services.
Okay, let's move on to another question, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, why is it that we can't have open season on this green iguana? And by the way, anything from bottom town down, you're not gonna worry about blue, because one can shoot anything on the sea down, yeah. It's us, the premier up and line up and they by our properties is where the blues are. Don't worry about that, we'll take care of that. We'll protect them. Why is it we can't just have open season? What is this process of registering this one and the likes? I know this is much more difficult than when we were growing up, but not many in here remembers when they had open season on agoutis because it was destroying our way of life, our livelihood, our food stock, food in this country. So this is a little more intense than that. But why can't we have open season and anybody kill them? Kill them, that's it. There is no such thing as humane killing. You're dead.
Director?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Essentially, we have an open season now. I mean, we have the private sector companies who are currently culling. There's no restriction on the number of iguanas that they can kill and charge people for removing from their yards and their properties. But the fact of the matter is that based on the RFI that we did prior to releasing the RFP, it appears that the level of culling, while it is significant by the private sector, it's around about 439,000 iguanas per year being removed from the population by the private sector currently, and that's based on the responses that we got in the RFP, so that's likely to be more than that. But it's still not doing a sufficient level of culling to have an impact on the population. So the population continues to grow. So this is why we have determined that we need to intervene, and hopefully not for too long a period of time, but we need to intervene and to try to hit this population as hard as we can with the project that we're proposing.
Mr. Chairman, that's interesting because there's been 2 laying seasons now that we haven't culled from the government perspective.
No, we actually invited people to register. It was an open registration process last year as well. We had about 70 people register, and in the end, only about 20 people participated. We ended up culling, hang on, I need to go back to my figures here. We culled 28,985 iguanas last year on Grand Cayman through that process.
And what time of the year was that?
We started early in the year at about April, or March or April, and we went through till I believe it was October, November.
So we went through that laying season, and we went through this one that just gone.
Correct. We went through this season.
So when we're doing, the private sector is doing 500,000, and the ministers say we currently have 1.1 in the island, 1.1 million. Is that what the minister said?
The current population. The population that we determined at the end of August last year was 1,061,000 iguanas.
Really?
And that,
I
that's
just
an
don't
estimate,
understand.
a population estimate.
I don't understand how we're saying that we're not keeping the population down, but the private sector is picking up 500,000. We estimated laying 500,000, and now we only got 1.1 million. That's keeping it down. That's what the minister was saying, that they lay on average we estimate they lay on average of 500,000 hatch on a yearly basis. So that's keeping it down.
No, the population growth is directly linked to the number of breeding animals in the population.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure where that number 500,000 came from, but that's not a real number. We have to base it on.
Okay.
We have to base it on the results that we get. We're just literally tomorrow, I'm hoping that I get the results of the survey that we've just completed at the end of August. So we'll have a new population estimate. We've been doing a population estimate every year since 2014. So in 2014, when we did our population survey, the population was estimated as 254,000 iguanas. In 2015, it was 409,000 iguanas. In 2016, 815,000 iguanas. And in 2017, 1,061,000 iguanas.
How do we know how many iguanas?
We do a survey. The Department of Environment does a survey every year at the end of August, at the end of the breeding season.
Format? I understand us taking census of people who stay in the house, but taking, and that is very, very, very simple, I guess, that there's no way we can guarantee those numbers, but we're rattling them off as if they're by belief.
So those numbers are estimates of the population. There are error bars on either side of that number, but for simplicity, we take the median number every year that we look at the population, and we say that it's a population estimate. It's not a census.
Mr. Chair, if I can.
Mr. Chair, I'm done, because the next question was going to be, if we go out there taking populations, and we should be killed now.
Remember, I do think this is very interesting discussion, but I'm not sure how relevant it is to discussion about the vote of the money here this afternoon. It's late. Are there any other questions?
Yes, sir. I've been waiting patiently,
Yes,
sir.
you have.
Through you, sir, for the public, has the management company been selected yet? Thank you. What is the closing deadline?
Director?
It's the 20th of September.
20th of September. And where can they get the information, what the prerequisites are to be able to apply to be the management company?
The RFP was made available on the Central Procurement Office's Bonfire website. It can be downloaded from that. If someone is interested and cannot download the RFP, just contact the DOE and we can have a copy emailed to them. Or they can come in and we can print one off and pick it up.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Georgetown Central, you had another question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. The director spoke about the paying process going to be a little bit different than it was before. Normally, it created difficulty because they would have to go collect from government through checking. So now you're going to try to get the management company to do the paying. Now, obviously, you wanted people to register to make sure that they were Caymanian before and have their names so you can have their checks ready and the like. Now, this is obviously going to be a different setup because you're going to have a management company now. So that management company probably will have disposable cash available to be able to go, okay, you've got 50 iguanas today, 50 times 5, blah, blah, blah. There you go, there's your cash. Which makes the process a little bit easier where persons don't necessarily have to register. Though I do, because the registering process is one of those things that I think maybe putting a little bit of hurdles in the way of maybe average persons who may just want to get involved in the process. But though I think that's an interesting point, the only problem with that would be to make sure that those persons who are bringing those iguanas are actually Caymanians and not non-Caymanians here on work permit and the like and taking advantage of. My last one is, have the department considered full-time employees whose focus will be only on this? Because the reason I say that is myself and you have had conversations through you, Mr. Chair, about the difficulties of culling with non-lethal weapons and how long that actually takes to get caught up with the target that we want to meet. So it's great that Caymanians are going to get the opportunity to make some money by killing these iguanas. But at the speed that we need to be going, you're going to have more efficient killing processes. Hence the reason, has the department considered actually having full-time, for example, 10 persons who are going to be contracted for a year or 2 years as an employee of government who have licensed air rifles and their job all day long is to just kill iguanas? Because there is a suspicion that there's a potential chance that if without the right amount of colors, based on your estimates, this may not work. And then the question then comes up is, we've spent a tremendous amount of money, projected to be close to $7 million, and the numbers still continue to grow.
Director?
I guess there are lots of different questions in that question. So one of the first things I want to clear up is that we have not specified the method of payment. It is one of the aspects of the RFP that we're asking the company to respond to us on, their method of payment and their frequency of payment. So that was the first thing. The second point about the full-time employees, we had considered that, but we had been getting a lot of feedback from honorable members about affording people the opportunity to earn some money through the killing of iguanas. And quite frankly, in terms of the scale of the operation that we will need to implement right now to hit the population as hard as we need to, it would require a significant number of people employed in order to do this. And we too were concerned about whether we had local capacity to take on board the culling that needs to happen, which is why we did the request for information some time ago and asked people to respond to that. So we got 40 people and our companies responding. And based on the information they provided to us, we are oversubscribed in terms of the amount of iguanas that they say that they can kill and what we estimate our annual target to be. So hopefully we can keep the colors on board and motivated, we can get the job done.
Any other member questions? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just for my own information, is there not something we can do with these, like poison them in the field and just let them die there? And if you can bury them in landfill, just by die people ground and become manure. I mean, like we do with rats and rabbits, we found something that we could. I understand. I know that they're vegetarians, but it must be something we can spray on the grass or farmers can use and poison them.
There's nothing that's available right now that would be specific to green iguanas. Unfortunately, we would.
Yeah, but there can be some collateral damage by the rat poison. If your dog eat it, you can kill the dog too, but we kill the rats with it.
But there's a method of setting it that, yeah.
Absolutely.
We'd prefer to stay away from that.
Mr. Chairman.
If we can, let's go ahead and put this matter to the vote.
Oops. Mr. Chairman.
Member from East End.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we can find out if this is going to be finished, the RFP response will be closed off in September. What is the earliest we can anticipate that a start?
We're hoping to be able to execute a contract early in October. Obviously, it's an unknown. We don't know how many bidders we're going to get. We have to evaluate the bids, and there will be some negotiation also as per the RFP with the final bidder that's been selected. There is a requirement to go through some kind of best and final offer negotiation. So we're hoping that we can start culling mid-October.
I wonder, Mr. Chairman, if we can find out then how in the contract with this management company, will it be a 7-day week?
What we're asking is for them to be available 6 days a week from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., I believe are the hours in the RFP.
And we're expecting to cull 6,000 per day. Did I hear that?
That's our estimate. We're hoping that we can hit the population that hard initially anyway. It will obviously fall off the greater number of iguanas that we kill, so we will have to adjust, you know, that the expected number, etc., per day as we go along.
So we don't anticipate that we can't expend this amount of money then? Impossible. Not in 2.5 months.
Well, we're hoping that we can reach a target of about 360,000 iguanas by the end of December, is the hope.
360?
I believe that is the target that we have, yes.
If you divide that by 2.5, you're talking 144 a day, a month.
Pardon? Yeah.
6,000, that is 6,000 a day.
Yes.
That is ambitious, I would like to think.
It is. It is ambitious.
Okay. Because certainly we have seen a situation here where payments will only be made out to this company as per production of receipts, right? Or invoice.
Correct. They're going to be basically invoicing us for two things. There will be a management component, which we're asking them to price, and then there will also be the number of iguanas that were actually culled for the month, and that will be based on the receipts that they issue to individual cullers, and then that we've also gotten a copy of and they keep a copy of, and the steering group is briefed on every month.
And that is up until the 31st of December.
No, we anticipate to run that method throughout the funding that we also have for next year.
Right now, the concentration is, this committee is being asked to approve 1.9 million to add on to 400,000, which is 2.3 million, to the 31st day of December 2018. I want to make it clear because it looks like we've been missing that point a little bit here. Not our fault, but we've been missing it. And this is only until the 31st day, and invoices will be paid up until that time. There is no fast forwarding or advancing in pay to that management company.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I understand the question. We have 1.1 million voted in the budget for 2019. So it's our intention to continue the project until we spend that money also. But I think what the Honourable Minister said in his statement was that we are going to be evaluating how we go on the project. And we won't be asking for supplementary expenditure unless the project is running as we've anticipated.
Mr. Chairman, maybe the lady misunderstood me. I am talking about this year. I can't deal with next year except to know that at that time we got 1.1. I'm talking about this year. That this program,
yes,
this monies is payable to and for the culling of iguanas up until the 31st day of December 2018.
Yes, that is correct. And in addition to that, it would be the management component as well. So we'll be paying the colors from that money, and we'll be paying the management company from that money.
And there is no advance of payment into the next year. Mr. Chairman, I guess she has now got a better understanding of what I'm trying to achieve here, because only payments up until the 31st of December will be paid out of here, based on invoices received.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are going to be following all of the financial rules and regulations that we know we have to adhere to in terms of expenditure within the financial year.
You need to be applauded. Mr. Chair, I just want to say, I know the department has been doing a good job, and I just want to wish them all the best. Keep on doing your hard work, and you've been committed to have chats with you. Anything I can do as a legislative member, I'll be happy to assist you in your department, okay?
All those in favor of HES 21, Environmental Services and Research for $1,900,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, just want to thank the members of this House for their support.
Minister, you do have a second vote that we are seeking, and if you're mindful to, I don't mind you expressing your thanks in relation to that now, but you can do it again. Do it after you got both of them done. So we'll proceed then with the output seeking approval for increase in the output for NGS 55, tertiary care at local and overseas institutions in the amount of $6,500,000. Minister, do you have a statement? I'll give you that opportunity to make a statement if you need to.
I just want to thank the committee for its support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is that in relation to NGS 55? Oh, okay, fair enough.
In relation to both.
Open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member for Hudson Town, yes.
I'm just looking at the amount, Mr. Chairman, and just trying to understand what the government plans are to tackle this bigger problem, because it is a growing problem, and we just can't be vote money every year down here and have the private sector be dumping individuals on the government. This is unfair to the government and the taxpayers of the country, and I'd like to understand what will be the plan to deal with this problem going forward. Thank you.
Minister.
Mr. Chair, I thank the member for that question, and very good question. Caucus, we've been battling with this this question for some time now, and we are looking at ways. We are having conversations amongst ourselves and with other organizations trying to find a way forward. But definitely, the intent of the ministry is to have some resolve to this line item, to this vote, to stem the tide and the rising cost of this for this NGS 55. But it is a growing problem. The caucus is aware and uncomfortable, and I am sure that the member, because of previous conversations with the member from Bordentown West, he knows that it is my full intention for over a year now to try to stem the tide to this growing cost.
Thank the minister for that question, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, how many people now are we having covered in terms of receiving indigent health care?
Minister.
In terms of this vote, it's actually indigent seafarers and veterans in this vote. It's all spread out in different ministries. As I understand it, there's over 1,600 people, 1,600 indigents that are on this list at this time. There's 951 seafarers and veterans also, in addition.
So the 1,600 is in total, the number of?
In addition to.
Yeah, okay. Member from Northside?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, sorry. My only concern is 6.5 million going to be enough? Because if you look to me like if you spent the 8 million that we gave you in August or when it was,
runs out in October.
Huh?
The 8 million runs out in a few weeks.
Okay, so if you would have spent, just say by the end of September, if you spent 18.9 million, that not gonna, the 6.5 million not going to cover November and December, is it?
Well, the thing about the coverage is that you don't really know.
Yeah, but you can't refuse anybody either.
Yeah.
So you need to have more than you think you might need, right? Because
this is the amount that's been requested.
But how did they come up with
by all estimates?
We had the same discussion when the budget was brought in November a year
Yes.
ago. I made the point then that that couldn't possibly be enough because it was less than half of what was spent the year before, right? So with the 8 million brought you almost up to what you spent the year before, but you're still short, right? So how do we arrive at the 6.5 million? Is just a number that somebody picked up and said, well, let's ask for 6.5 million, or did you do it 1/12 and multiply it for November and December, or what?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank the member for that question. This figure of 6.5 is a figure estimated and sent to us as from Cynical and estimated to take us through the end of the year. The 8 million that we had also included some neonates, preemies.
We can't eliminate that.
And the thing about it is you never can estimate, and I understand and appreciate what the member from the opposition leader is saying in terms of ensuring that you have enough buffer. This is the number that Cynical is comfortable with, 6.5 million to take us through to the end of the year based on projections.
But seamen and veterans don't get overseas care. But why are you harassing my constituents then, who is seaman, threaten carry in court for overseas care if they get it for free?
10%, right?
They're being written by your attorneys to say, although...
Yeah, they get it.
No, there's something wrong with this one. It's not for seamen and veterans.
Is it 10%? I understand the seafarers are supposed to pay 10%. I stand to get the correct information for you, but in my memory, I believe that the seafarers had some arrangement that they would collect a stipend from their members that would cover 10% of the cost. And I think that is what we either need to fix that area in the arrangement.
No, but here's my problem.
Because it's never paid anyhow.
If we're saying that we're providing this coverage for seamen, which means basically it's free.
Yes.
Right? Why then is the law firm that you recently employed writing 80-year-old seamen and threatening to carry them to court when, in this particular case, I personally got a letter from Mr. McLean when he was a minister that man's overseas bill was written off when he was a minister, and but now he's being harassed by this law firm and told that because and if it's free, but why are we suing these people?
I think there's something uncomfortable there, but I undertake to get that information for you because I think I've heard of some other cases in like nature.
And it was always my understanding that seamen got local care and that they were also collected from their members a certain monthly fee, right?
Yes.
Or annual, I think it's $600 a year or something like that, right?
Yes.
As a kind of an insurance. And they use it to buy equipment and other stuff for the thing.
Yeah, telemedicine.
But they are being harassed by this law firm. And you need to put a stop. I need an undertaking for you to put a stop to that if they're getting it for free.
For the record, it's not this minister that hired the law firm. It's not even my department. It's Cynical, which falls under another minister.
No, man, you're responsible to the HSA. This is a recent thing with the HSA.
Oh, from the HSA?
They hire, but that is who is suing them. But this is where they help. Their care is also covered there, ain't it?
From the HSA.
Overseas. because it went through the HSA and Seneco. They are the two agencies that deliver health care to people for you.
Yeah.
And if they are going, if the law firm is going after people who are supposed to be getting this thing for free, we need to put a stop to it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know which law
call
firm.
Names or anything, but
I don't know which law firm it is. But if we could chat, or if you could provide me with some information.
But it's that one that Arden was talking about a couple of days ago. That's a public knowledge. It was disclosed to us here in public hearings.
Mr. Chairman.
They took it away from the Caymanian and gave it to this law firm. Anyway, I would appreciate if you check it out because something needs to be done.
Member for Bodentown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just through you, sir. I know for a fact that this is something that the minister is working on, because this is something that he and I have had many conversations and meetings on. But I just want to make one thing perfectly clear before we go to the vote. Back in 2014, 2015, we were spending $16.8 million a year on this vote. And now it's $25.4 million. That's an increase of 51% in 3 years. At the rate in which we're going, we're looking at close to $40 million in the next 3 years if we continue at this rate. And the solution, Mr. Chairman, has got to be where we start looking at national health insurance. But this, as it stands right now, is unsustainable. And what really bothers me the most with this, Mr. Chairman, is when I look at the SEMA report and see the profits that the insurance companies are making on health, and it's being dumped off on the people of the Cayman Islands and the government, and it is wrong. And this is something that needs to be dealt with, where we need to take on the middleman. But this cannot continue. And more, I know people need this, and I'm really voting on this with a very heavy heart, because this is not right.
All those in favor of NGS 55, tertiary care at local and overseas institutions, the amount of $6,500,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Members of the committee, thank you for working through this with me. Then all that's left for us to do now is to consider the motion for the use of the Environmental Protection Fund to pay for the Green Iguana culling program. I call, therefore, on the Minister for the Environment to read the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, whereas the Environmental Protection Fund was created on the 10th of December 1997 by government motion number 1497 for the purpose of defraying expenditure incurred in protecting and preserving the environment of the islands, and whereas it is required that disbursements from the fund may only be made in accordance with resolutions made by the Finance Committee, and under the authority of the Minister of Finance for the purpose of defraying expenditure incurred in protecting and preserving the environment of the islands. And whereas at 31st August 2018, the balance of the fund was $61.1 million, Finance Committee has already approved disbursements from the fund to occur during the 2018 financial year of $16.1 million for land conservation, reducing the evasive green iguana population and remediation of the Georgetown landfill, and $9.550 million in the 2019 financial year for reducing the invasive green iguana population and remediation of the Georgetown landfill. And whereas the government is seeking approval in the 2018 financial year for the amount shown on the overleaf schedule, totaling $1.9 million that represent expenditures to be incurred with respect to protecting and preserving the environment of the islands, being met by disbursements from the fund. Be it now therefore resolved that the expenditures shown on the overleaf schedule totaling 1.9 million that are expected to be incurred in the 2018 financial year to be recognized as being in the interest of protecting and preserving the environment of the islands. And 2, that the Minister for Finance be authorized to disperse up to 1.9 million from the Environmental Protection Fund to cover expenditures to be incurred with respect to the matters on the overleaf schedule.
Are there any questions with respect to the motion? Does the member wish to speak further?
Just like to thank all members for their support.
Okay. Questions? Any further debate with regard to the motion? Okay. If there is no further debate, I then put it to the committee. Be it therefore resolved that the expenditures shown on the overleaf schedule totaling $1,900,000 that are expected to be incurred in the 2018 financial year to be recognized as being in the interest of protecting and preserving the environment of the islands, and 2, that the Minister for Finance be authorized to disperse up to $1,900,000 from the Environmental Protection Funds to cover expenditures to be incurred with respect to the matters on the overleaf schedule. Schedule is the agency, the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing, the amount of $1,900,000. And the program is aimed at reducing the invasive green iguana population. An additional $1,900,000 is sought during the 2018 financial year. The additional amount sought of $1,900,000 will form part of the appropriation HE21. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Members of the committee, that now that concludes the business of Finance Committee at this point in time. And having approved the supplementary appropriation bill and the appropriation changes under Section 12 of the Public Management and Finance Law, it now falls to the staff of the Legislative Assembly and the clerk to prepare the report that we will table and present to the whole House of our deliberations and conclusions today. And I think our intention is that we will await the report today so that we can conclude this matter. Let's break and we'll give the staff a chance to see what can be accomplished this evening.